Hi, everyone. It's so wonderful to see so many familiar faces in the room today. Some of you may know Robin, Verson, and myself, Annie Woods. We work for Oak. We're also farmers, and we're going to introduce ourselves a little bit more here into the first couple of slides. But we're really excited to talk to you today about kind of a newer program area for Oak. So, Oak's been doing conference and field days and all the great programming around organic transition for a while now. But in the last couple of years, we've started up some new work that is really focusing on helping farmers to be able to measure their on-farm sustainability. And so today, our goal, Robin and I want to talk to you about a tool that we've been developing at Oak called the Global Farm Metric Farm Sustainability Assessment Tool. And some of you in this room have actually been able to participate and work with this tool. For some of you, this will be the first time hearing about it. And Robin is here, even though you may get her wonderful emails as Oak's membership and communication coordinator. She's also a farmer, and she participated in this project and filled out the sustainability assessment tool for her farm. And so she's here to, give us the real download dirt on what it's like to be a farmer using this tool. So Robin, we really appreciate you being here. I know it's vulnerable to let people look inside behind the curtain of your farm operation, but we're really glad that you're here today to do that. And then we have a new exciting opportunity here at Oak to take the next step and go beyond just helping farmers to assess their on-farm sustainability and then put some new things into practice for climate-smart solutions. We have an exciting new program that Brooke introduced at lunch, our Climate-Smart program, and we'll end the session talking about that and getting into the details of it. So just a little bit of a background. This project really took off for Oak in 2021. So we have a supporter of Oak who also works with the Sustainable Food Trust out of the United Kingdom, and they've been working on a project to create a framework by which any farm across the globe could measure their on-farm sustainability. And so there were some beginning conversations in 2021 about the fact that the Sustainable Food Trust hadn't really trialed this framework outside of the United Kingdom, and there was an opportunity for us here in Kentucky to be the first place outside of the UK to trial this tool and adapt the tool to be used here in Kentucky and be useful for Kentucky farmers. In 2022, I came on board part-time with Oak to work on this project. I'm also a farmer in my other, whatever, part-time, whole-time, whatever you want to call it when you're a farmer all the time. So one of the things that I started doing was looking into the research of the framework, trying to adapt the tool to be specific to Kentucky, and meeting with a lot of experts to help inform the way we were adapting the tool. And so the first couple years of this work have been funded by the Owsley Brown, the Second Family Foundation, and through a specialty crop block grant. And this past year in 2023, we've had the opportunity to take the tool and give it to farmers and have them fill it out for their farms. And we've worked with 26 farms to date on this project. And again, the funding comes from the Specialty Crop Block Grant and the Owsley Brown, the Second Family Foundation. And then we have just very recently been awarded this USDA Partnership for Climate-Smart Commodities Grant, which will help us move this work into the future. And so our goal is for the next 5 years to engage with 75, but even up to 100 farms annually to use this farm sustainability assessment tool that we've developed, and then take it to the next step of getting technical assistance. Folks will be able to engage in field days and learning opportunities, get incentive payments for climate-smart practices on their farm, and then we're also going to be working to help develop some value chain opportunities for farmers that participate and are interested in selling their products into sort of the climate-smart market. All right, so Robin, I'm going to let you introduce yourself here. Welcome to our living room conversation between me and Robin.
We like to share the mic because that helps us be in the same program. I'm Robin Verson. I'm a certified organic vegetable farmer, South Central Kentucky, Metcalfe County. I have what is right now considered sort of a small CSA, deliver 50 shares weekly to Nashville, so go down in the other direction. I also have livestock, I raise sheep for fiber and have developed like a farm yarn. And from here on in, I don't work for Oak. I'm a farmer for the sake of the next 55 minutes.
Yeah, and as I mentioned, I work with Oak as well as the research manager, but I do have a market garden in northern Kentucky, Darkwood Farm, selling into restaurants in northern Kentucky in the Cincinnati area, and have been a CSA farmer for a long time, but took a break last year because I have a very small child at home as well. So I'm in Augusta, Kentucky, and I also filled this out for my farm. So I was like, I'm not only the president, I'm a member. If anybody remembers that tagline from ads from the 80s. Aside from Robin and I, we've had 24 other farms participate in this project. So Robin was part of a cohort of 6 farms that really got into the tool, gave us a ton of really good feedback. So we ran the tool through these 6 farmers at the beginning of the year in 2023. We took the tool back, did some adaptations, listened to their feedback, and then we've trialed it with 20 other farms this past fall, and folks got the last bit of their data to us right before the holiday season. People that participated included certified organic operations. It included folks that are using organic practices but are not certified, and split operations that have conventional parts to their farm and organic parts to their farm. The sizes have varied from an acre up to over 1,000 acres. We really wanted to work with both small and large farms, really like hit the spectrum there. And then we've had tenants, we've had landowners, we've had folks that own land and rent land, we've had institutional farms fill this out as well. So we were really wanting to test it across an inclusive group of farms, and we were really looking to try and touch a lot of the parts of the state, go to farms all over Kentucky. So there's a couple of graphs up there that I'll orient you to. So the one on the left, this is from Robin's group, the cohort of 6 farms that filled it out in the spring. So if we take all of the sales dollars that group put out in a year, they were selling back out to 60% of that money was going out direct to consumer sales. So that's our, at the farmer's market through a CSA. The yellow wedge there are intermediate markets, so about 28% of the sales went out to wholesalers, distributors, that type of thing. Didn't even register as 1%, a very small amount of institutional sales, like, sales to schools, things like that. And then a small part direct to retailers like supermarkets or locally owned stores, that type of sales. So a lot of direct to consumer, but we did have, other markets there. And then the graph on the right shows you, if we take all of those dollars and split it up between, what were the different enterprises on the farm, what were the different agricultural products, you can see there was a big portion of the sales going to vegetables, but we have also several types of livestock, row crops, we've got nursery crops, fruit. Does any of that resonate with you, with what you sell on your farm?
Yeah, it's direct to consumer, and I think I'm responsible for the 3% sheep goat, but I don't know that for sure.
You're not. There's more.
There's someone else. Yeah. Someone else in the room. Annie and I, when we were preparing this, we've been talking about it for a while. I wonder if the direct to consumer farmer is more interested in assessing their sustainability or not. I'm curious about that 66%, so we'll just unpack that together.
Yeah. Yeah, but that actually leads to a great question for you, Robin, which is why, you've got a question over here.
Yeah, the cows and calves, was that beef operations, or I didn't notice any specific dairy listed. Were any dairy farms involved?
In that first group, no.
Okay.
Yeah, yes, yeah.
From Organic Valley standpoint.
Yeah, got it, yeah. We've created this farm sustainability assessment tool. It's not the only sustainability assessment tool that's out there for farmers to use. There are a lot of them out there now. But I just kind of wanted to ask you, Robin, why were you even interested in doing this? Why did you want to trial a farm sustainability assessment tool?
Yeah, I've been certified organic since 1999. That's a long time, and so I've done a lot of that type of assessment. And I think what was most interesting to me about this tool was because of you'll see as we proceed through this presentation, but it really was gauging sustainability not just from an input perspective or an output. It really looked at your whole farm sustainability. And that's something that's just interesting to me personally. And moving forward, I think that's going to be called for by more and more people as we're really attaching ourselves to our food systems and what's sustainable and what's not.
Yeah, and I would say too, a lot of the farm sustainability assessments that are out there now sometimes are buyer driven, so that if a farmer is wanting to sell through a certain market channel, that buyer is going to say, are you meeting our standards, and here's our sustainability assessment, right? So we wanted to kind of take a look at it more from like the ground up, from the farmer perspective, and say, let's build a tool that farmers can use for themselves without maybe a buyer in mind at this moment, but to really help them tell the whole story of their farm and look at so many different aspects and prepare them then for this sort of like oncoming market of buyers that really want to know what you're doing on your farm in different ways and for climate smart markets. So we really wanted to sort of be ground up with farmers first. And so, this tool in particular that we've developed, as I mentioned, it comes down from the Sustainable Food Trust, which is a nonprofit organization in the United Kingdom, and they've developed what's called the Global Farm Metric. It's a framework by which, as I mentioned before, any farm across the world could kind of get into this framework and assess sustainability. And really being able to measure, have some actual measurements from your farm that relate to sustainability. And what we really like is that they've done a pretty comprehensive job at looking at a lot of sustainability assessments across the world and thinking about how can we be whole farm, how can we be holistic, how can we go beyond maybe just soil measurements or output or inputs, and how can we look at some of the social, economic aspects as well as the environmental aspects of a farm. And how can we also be aligned with other sustainability assessments? So how can we be gathering the data that a lot of folks are asking for right now and using those common terms that farmers know and the common language that we use to do that. And I think this part here, the practical part, is important. That just means, like, as a farmer, we're not going to get in here and be asked questions that, like, we have no idea about, right? That it's for farmers, it's written for farmers, it's asking you things that you either know off the top of your head or that you keep some records for, or that you can kind of back of the envelope come up with. It's really outcomes focused, so it's about measuring actual things on your farm. We do embed it with some ideas of best practices, but it is a lot about, like, what's the outcome on your farm, what's a measurable outcome that we can compare to benchmarks. As I mentioned before, we really tried to test this out with a lot of different types of farms, so we want to be inclusive of farms of different sizes, farms that produce different products, and it's evidence-based and evolving, just meaning we're trying to keep it up to date with the best science, the best data that we have, and we know that the tool will change over time as we get better and better information and better data from farms. And then lastly, an important part, I think, is that this assessment should drive change, not only on your individual farm, but as a whole, we can start to look at some of the data that we collect from farms together and get an idea of where farmers are really having great successes, where farmers as a group really need a lot of support from the wider community. And Robin, did you have anything that you wanted to add here about the sort of holistic vibe of the framework?
Yeah, I think I said it already. I think we're so used to certifying organic or doing an animal welfare approved or something that's like very singular in its lens, whether we're dealing with crops or livestock. And so I think the most exciting and attractive part of using the tool for me was just like how broad it was. We'll get into the categories in the next slide.
Yeah, so that's all sort of theoretical, and like, how does a farmer really like do this? Like, what are they looking at when they get a farm sustainability assessment tool? So the way that this works is the tool breaks down into 12 different categories that are listed here, and like I said, this cuts across things that you'd consider for your farm, environmentally, it's related to economics, social aspects of your farm. And we just also want to say, like, these 12 categories are like not siloed, they're interconnected, right? So you're like thinking about water, but that also like affects different aspects of your farm. You're thinking about your labor, but that aspect, that cuts across different aspects of your farm too. There is a QR code there that'll take you to the Sustainable Food Trust's website, and you can read more. They have like a really great like multi-page report about the framework. But like I said, we are one of the first places outside of the United Kingdom to actually take the tool and adapt it for farmers to use in a different location. So we wanted to base it really like locally as we could. And yeah, Robin, do you want to talk about when we were deciding to put this presentation together, I was like, Robin, which ones do you want to jump into to look at for your farm? Because we don't have time to look at all of them. But
in 1 hour, we're not going to discuss 12 categories. Spoiler alert. So I chose community. I'm a CSA farmer. I have always been a CSA farmer. And I think that there are a lot of people in this room and in the oak community that are interested in building healthy local food systems. So for that reason, we're diving into community. It's about to get.
Yeah, so for each category, so we've chosen community here for Robin. So each category of the 12 categories breaks down into 3 subcategories. And this is where we're like leaning on the framework that Sustainable Food Trust has put together to say like, what are the important aspects of community we should be thinking about when we think about sustainability on a farm? So you can see here, community breaks down into local services, into network, and into engagement. And under each of those, you'll see a number of bullets. Those are our indicators or measures. And so this is kind of what we got from them. Like, we need to be thinking about how would we measure the short supply chain activities on a farm? How would we measure the provision of local employment on a farm? And so then that's where it was up to us to come up with a way to measure those and to find some benchmark data that relates to those things so that when the farmer gets into the tool and fills it out, they can see how their farm sort of compares to some benchmark data. And so we're going to take a look here at what, I know you can't read that, and that's okay. You don't have to read the fine print. But what this is an actual screenshot from Robin's file of the farm sustainability tool that she filled out. And so this is right now in a spreadsheet format. And so Robin has her own file for her farm, opens it up, goes here, and this is what she's looking at when she gets into the tool. And we're going to actually zoom in on some stuff here in a minute. But so she's going to fill out all these local service questions, her network questions, and our other engagement subcategory. And then at the end of it, she's going to get an overall score for her community category. And then I just want to say, you see a 72 there. That's actually a really good grade. So I just want to say, the 50 point was our sort of like average, like you're doing good, you want to be at 50 or above and moving toward 100, but it's almost impossible for any farm to get a score of 100. We all know there's trade-offs on a farm, right? And so you might be really focused on sustainability in one aspect and know that you have a sort of trade-off to that. And so, yeah, 72 is a great score.
In case anyone wondered about peer review, it's really difficult and really beautiful. And so this is like peak vulnerability, my actual score right there. Mm-hmm. But I also want to say that being part of the first 6 farms that trialed this, I was like, those numbers have to change. Like the 0 to 100 was too painful for so many of us. And so in the new version of the tool, it's like 1 to 10.
Yeah. People felt like they were getting a grade at school,
Yeah,
and like
72
a 72
is not
she would
okay.
not be happy with that on her report card at school. So we did make that change based on the feedback that we got from the group. So this is a little bit more of a zoom in here. So this is just one of the indicator, measures within the tool. So this is the local employment question, and so Robin would open her file and look at this question, and then let's see if I want to. How does this? Ooh, that's exciting. That little white box there, the farmer sees a white cell in the spreadsheet and puts their information in. So it's asking how many employees do you have that live within a different radii, right, from the farm. So how local is your employment pool? Are you offering employment opportunities? So Robin would fill that in, and then she would see the local employment score there in that sort of pink column. So her employee pool is really close to her farm, so she's getting a high score there. But then we also, within the tool, automatically Robin's going to see these graphs pop up. And so on the right, we have some benchmark data from a national ag worker survey that shows, the distances of different workers from their farms. And so then she can see her data there on the left, right, as she's filling that in. And do you want to talk, Robin, a little bit about what it's like as you're filling that to see some of that stuff come alive in front of you?
Yeah, it's a really exciting integrated tool because you're getting that feedback when you're filling it out immediately, and so it's a really well integrated process of filling it out and seeing what you're doing, and also just the questions. Even if you didn't answer the questions and see where your answer lies on a beautiful graph, it still makes you think about the sustainability of your farm. Like, why are we even asking about employment or local services and stuff like that? It just, the most exciting thing about the tool and filling it out was the questions and thinking about your whole farm organism and the sustainability from that. Yeah.
Yeah, as Robin mentioned too, so
Oh,
then
yeah,
she, you know, as part of that first group of farmers that interacted with this tool, this like group of 6 farmers last spring, this is just like an example here of like the question that the folks in the spring cohort filled out and then like what it looked like later for the fall people. Okay, so you don't have to read all the little words there, but I just wanted to show you that this is part of that adaptive nature of the tool. We really wanted the farmers to give us their feedback. And so one of the things Robin mentioned already is getting a 75 feels bad, even though we kept saying, like, you're above 50, like, you know, it's okay. So we did change the scoring so that, and Robin filled out that part at the top. This is not her data at the bottom. This is just like an example of what a fall, like one of the fall farms would look like. So we added an extra question in there to like make it more clear. Instead of saying direct sales to end users, like, do you have direct sales to end users? That was like hard for people to understand. So then we have 2 new lines that are direct sales to local retailers and institutions or direct sales to local manufacturers, just to like clarify our language and make it more understandable for farmers. And then also, changing the scoring. And then we also tried to make it may not come across on the screen up there, but one of the things that we tried to do between the first version of the tool and the second is to make it a little more accessible for people with visual impairments. So like we darkened some of the fonts and created more lines and things so that there was like more contrast in the tool. So again, we just are leaning on our farmers to help us know where we need to make those changes. And I'd also say too, we were also listening to the Sustainable Food Trust back in the UK because they've been doing farm trials with their farmers there and learning things and kind of giving us the feedback of here's what we're hearing from our farmers, here's how we should tweak things in the tool. And they've also been running their tool through expert opinions on their side of the pond, right? And so we've been kind of collaboratively shaping this tool just in little ways to make it better and better. Okay, and then this, I just wanted to show an example of, this is a brand new question that we asked for our fall cohort of 20 farms that Robin didn't get to fill out, and we looked at it together to say, oh, there was this other aspect of community, not just what are you as the farmer doing to your community, like for your community, but what is the community providing for you as a farmer? And so then we added these questions about access to key amenities just as a human being, a farmer human being, and then these farm services, which you can see on the right. And there were different, you know, you could choose like how your category of how far each of those things were to your farm. And so, yeah, Robin, what did you think when I showed you that?
Yeah, I thought that was great because I can remember having so many conversations over all these years with people that were looking for land, and especially young farmers starting out that were thinking about maybe having families, and they were already thinking about the possibility for like childcare support or school systems. I'm like, good on you for thinking of that ahead of time. I'm not that person, but it's really an indicator here of like your overall farm sustainability, right? How far do you have to go to access, can y'all read these things, but it's schools, daycares, processing facilities, and things of that nature. So again, this is a great question. This wasn't on mine, but a great addition. It's a living document that we're really working with each other and with Annie to make it. Oh, Madeline.
Yep, Madeline. This is just like, this is not for your farm. So this is Robin's daughter asking the question. I'm like, she's like, Mom, no, we're further than that. No, this is just example data because Robin didn't get to fill that part out. Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and another really, oh yeah, Mike, do you have a question?
On the last screen, could you suggest to the trust that they look at geolocating that so it spells out through
Yeah, so that's a great question, and yeah, this is something we do talk about that, about like, is there some of this where if you just identify the farm's address, could we automatically, from geographic information systems and mapping, like be able to automatically get some of those things together? And I would say that's definitely like, that's a want, but it's maybe in the scope of a longer term to get there. But I think that would be great, because then that saves the farmer the time of having to do those things, yeah. As long as the data in the maps are correct, right? You know, one of the reasons, I think actually that brings up a good point, Mike, which is like, there is a lot of this that could be automatically filled in from mapped data, but I think we as farmers know that the ground truthing on some of that is not always correct, right? Or it might not line up perfectly. And so we are asking some of these questions of the farmers because they know, you know, they know best, right? And some of the data that are in some of those things maybe need to be updated or just, you know, checked for their ground truth. So, yeah, so yeah.
Is that like the first grocery store that you would shop at near your house, or is it the first grocery store you come to?
Yes, yeah.
You know,
No, that's a good question, because we didn't go into that detail, but we did a lot, like, I had one-on-one sessions with the farmers, and that's the questions that would come up, so that tells us we need to maybe either clarify more, but like, I would say like, for example, people asked about what's the closest processor for animals, that's closer than my USDA processor, and I was like, no, you need to tell us about the one that you have to go to for your system, you know? So I think there is some level of interpretation in there, but it really opens up those conversations in a one-on-one manner so that the farmer doesn't feel alone filling it out. They get some support like back from us. Yeah. Yeah.
As far as mileage goes,
Yeah.
are you asking specifically for drivable miles or like straight line miles?
We don't ask the question in that way. We just leave it up to the farmer to interpret. But I think most of them were interpreting it in like driving miles, because like how long does it take you to get to those services? Unless you're gonna fly a drone to pick up your your groceries or whatever. Yeah. So yeah.
So just to clarify, to piggyback off that question, because I was thinking the same thing, like, yeah, I could go to Tracy's Meat Packing, but I can't sell meat from Tracy's Meat Packing.
Yeah.
You know, sorry, Brian, but
Yeah.
you get certifications that you need to have. And so is this where you're going to continue to develop, or is it just kind of like, you'll give maybe a little bit more instruction and fill it out
Yeah.
based on what we would do?
Yeah, I think that there's always room for what we're learning in the one-on-one conversations to improve the language, just like I showed you that example before, like that one little question. So this was the first time we ran that question through our group of 20 farmers this fall, so we definitely want to improve and clarify where we can. But I think also it's one of those things like you're talking about the meat processing thing, like that's also a place where we can identify where farmers are a lot of farmers are having that need in those one-on-one conversations, right? Like, oh, I have one close by, but I have another that I need to get to it.
Actually, yeah. Well, because even in your questioning, when I read the first set, I said, well, that's not us at all, because we take our beef to a meat processor that has the right thing, and then you added that. I was like, oh, good, it's the second set.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you're doing it.
Yeah. And I know I would love to take some more questions, but I know we got a lot of other slides we want to get through, so I'm going to try and jump ahead a little bit here, if that's okay. One of the things we were able to do for the farms too is to actually go out and visit the farms and provide soil sampling for free for the farmers that participated in this project. And so these are the soil sample results from Robin's farm on the left. Again, hard to read, but I wanted to show you what her soil report looked like. So for all of the farmers that participated, we took soil samples on 3 fields of their choice on the farm. We sent them to Waters Agricultural Labs here in Kentucky, and you'd get the results back, and there's this sort of, at the top, this thing is hard to, there we go, the nutrient analysis at the top, and then we have these right here, these soil health measures. So we wanted to kind of go, well, maybe you can just tell us, Robin, how this kind of goes beyond what you normally do through.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know, I usually just do soil testing through the cooperative extension. It doesn't go this deeply into it. can almost barely understand these results. And so I think this is my moment to talk about Sarah. Like, Oak has some new staff who's providing technical assistance, and like as soon as conference is over, I'm sending these to her to help me figure it out. But it's a deeper dig into our soil and our soil analysis, and I think that's a real benefit. For me, it's expensive. I don't allocate that year after year. Maybe I'm the only one that just doesn't do that, but
No, we heard from a lot of farmers that they normally test through extension, which is great. And then this offers some more details, and it is a cost to a lot of farmers, and that's prohibitive for a lot of farmers to actually go the further distance to get some of these more expensive soil tests run. And so, and in addition to Sarah, who's our new organic production specialist, who can help you think about organic amendments that you might use on your farm, we also are hiring 2 new soil health specialists that'll be able to help with interpretation of these results as well. And then the other fun thing that we did when we went to the farms, I think it's fun, and maybe, I think we're here with a lot of nerdy farm people who would think it's fun too, is we had a Brix refractometer. So if the operation had vegetable production, we could test the Brix level of the vegetables, and we had some benchmark values from an Ohio State University study that we could compare the Brix of Robin's tomatoes and her cucumber and her chard to those published values. And then that fed into her production score. Production's one of the categories. And then we also did some water testing too. So we were testing for dissolved oxygen in a water body of the farmer's choice on their farm, if they have one. And so, I'm gonna go ahead and advance and let Robin talk to us maybe about her creek and the day that we came out and tested the water at her farm.
yeah, I mean, the riparian areas are so sensitive to me, and we think about this all the time, and Madeline will probably confirm. Like, we have ducks that love to get in the creek, and it freaks us out really bad that like we're ruining our creek. And so I was kind of scared that Annie came to test the water, and I explained this to her. I'm like, Annie, the ducks, and but our water's really healthy, and so that made me feel great. And it was I think the whole, maybe to blow it out a little bit with using this tool and taking this assessment, you're digging in and you kind of already have your fears of your or I have my own fears of my management, my farm management, my land stewardship, and so water was one that I was like, oh gosh, what do we do if it's really bad and we have to get rid of the ducks? And because the fencing doesn't work with it, they know where the creek is.
Yeah, but she scored great on her water, I should say. And so again, I know this is hard to read. It's like a snapshot of a spreadsheet. But Robin went in and she was asked a lot of questions about the aquatic biota in her creek. So asking her, hey, have what are the invertebrates you've seen? What are the fish that you've seen? Have you seen fish kills? And these are actually indicators. There's in water quality indicators guide from NRCS that we used as our guidance of like, let's boil this down to some indicators that a farmer would know on their farm. And some of the things she knew and some of the things she didn't. And she said to me even afterward, oh, now I want to look at my creeks more closely at some of the biology in the creeks. And then the bottom there, we tested her dissolved oxygen levels, and the highest you could get was 12 parts per million, and every time that we tested it, 3 times, she had a 10. So she got the highest score you can get there for dissolved oxygen, which tells us about that water body's ability to support aquatic life on the farm. And so then, when all was said and done, Robin had filled out her data, we had done the farm visit, we had all the results from the farm visit. At the end of it, she has this report card. Again, we've talking about like the grade, how it feels like getting a grade, right? But for all of the 12 categories, there's a score for Robin, and then there's within that the 3 subcategories. You get a score for each of those too. So, and then you get this nice radar diagram, or I say like a spider web or connected thread right there that kind of shows you. We'd like to see folks at that 50 level, or wherever you're at, we want you to move toward that 50 and even beyond it in your journey toward sustainability. And so, yeah, I'm gonna let Robin talk about what it felt like to get that scorecard.
I keep saying this over and over. I don't know, what is it in human nature that notices the lowest score? It's just the awfulest thing. And so, I mean, there's so many great numbers, and I'm just like right there at 35. Energy and fuel, no renewables on my farm. It's a horrifying number. we could blow it up and you could look at it big, 35. So when I had to do that, and Annie and I have had this conversation so many times, and so part of it is working with Annie and working with the Oak team. It's been very safe space to do this, but she's like, well, just wait until you get to this other category. She knew I was going to score well in another category, because we can't do it all, you know, and I'm doing what I can, but yeah, I want to try and be the person that looks at the higher scores better, but it's a journey to fill out the tool and see your results looking like this, obviously.
Yeah, and then there's this next part of it, which is now like Robin has been filling this out by herself and has no idea of like how she compares to the rest of the group. And so, you know, the folks that participated in this project agreed that they would have their data anonymously put into group data, right? And so for the group of farmers that filled this out alongside Robin in the spring, here are their results. And I'm going to explain the graph a little bit. This is a box and whisker graph. So for each of the 12 categories you see here at the bottom, you see a little like box there with these little, you know, T-looking things coming off of them. And so those whiskers, the T's, show you the spread of scores, like from the lowest to the highest score, you know, amongst the 6 farms. And then the box gives you, if it's a bigger box, that just means the scores were like more spread out. And if it's closer, if it's a smaller box, it means that everybody was like scoring very similarly in those categories. So we've got the orange line is the 50 line, and I just want to point out here that like these are Oak member farms. These are people that are practicing, you know, they're using organic practices. They're very likely to be thinking about sustainability to even take the time to fill this out, because it takes about 6 hours, we've found, to fill the whole thing out. People break it up into little chunks. But yeah, this then gives you some context. Like, you're not just living in a vacuum. I always tell the story that every time I go to a farm, everybody's like, don't look at that, that looks like a mess, this is whatever. And I'm like, no, you all are doing great. Everybody's farm looks like that. You just focus on what you think you're not doing well, right? So Robin has generously allowed us to put a star here where she scored for her farm and all of those things. And I'd say this is very like similar to the pattern we've seen on all the farms, where maybe she's like the top star, like she has had the highest score. Like, for example, those 2 orange arrows are showing, like, we looked into community and water, but we didn't look into all these other things for Robin in the interest of time. But like, you know, we just looked at water, you've got the top star there. But then there's other ones where you may be on the bottom. And so, you know, what do you feel like when you look at that?
Well, it's interesting because we're all in community together, but we definitely don't have this shared experience, you know, where we're like sharing our soil results at a conference or, I don't know, whatever is happening right now in the room. But so there's a certain amount of vulnerability, but it's like in that space, that's when we really can like be motivated to action. That's what I keep thinking is the most change happens when you're a little bit outside your comfort zone. So I'm pretty outside my comfort zone showing everyone this, but I'm gonna have some solar panels next time I'm standing in front of y'all. So.
No, and I think I just want to point out here that, like, it's not, I mean, you're naturally as a human gonna have like feelings when you fill this out, right? But it's, I think, also there to show you, like, look at all of us above that 50 line. Look at like these really good scores. And Robin, even if you have the lowest star on animals, you're still at like a 75, which is like great. Like, everybody in our cohort is thinking a lot about animal welfare and how they treat their livestock. So I think those are the stories that we want to like walk away from this with. And if you are in the fall cohort of 20 farms, like, this is the Robin's group's data, because the tool she filled out was slightly different. You know, we are going to be talking about this all together. February 29th, we're doing a Zoom to be able to look at the group results of our group and be able to do this too. Yeah, so I just also wanted to say, like, the next step is you can even like zoom in, like, we can zoom into the water, right? Like, we only talked about the aquatic indicator species and the dissolved oxygen, but now we can see that all the farms that filled this out alongside with Robin had, like, now we see a lot more variability when we really like zoom in on the details, right? And then we can put Robin's stars on there too and see, you know, how she's doing in these individual, you know, indicators, and you know, make those decisions if like that's something you want to celebrate and continue to protect, right? Or if it's something that you want to take action on improving in that area. And then we can even look at the data in a different way, which is now that we've looked at where everybody in your group gets their water from, we can like put all of the group results together and see, okay, like this example, we asked a question about what percentage of your water use on the farm comes from different water sources, right? Like on the farm or off the farm. And, maybe you can just quickly, Robin, speak to that.
Well, this made me think of something that comes up over and over again when we're thinking about the tool, and it's a good time right now because we don't have control over everything, right? And so municipal water didn't come out to my farm until very, very recently, so I didn't have that choice. And so this is like, and I don't have control over my creek because there's farms all around me. So I think one thing that we wanted to talk about that we hadn't yet, and it's a good time, is just like always remembering that we can only do what we do and we only have control over what we have, and we're putting ourselves in our environment, our community, our systems, and I'm saying that about that.
But we know that our on-farm sustainability is affected by what's going on around us and all of those things too. So I think that's important to know, like a lot of this is within your control, but it's not all within your control. And we have to, as farmers, adapt to those situations. And then this is just another way to look at the data too. We looked at the water, the creek that we tested. So this is another box and whisker, but this is actually looking at the dissolved oxygen content in parts per million. So on the left, you can see 0 would be the lowest amount of dissolved oxygen, 12 would be the highest. We didn't really have anybody get that like highest 12. But now we can look at it in, like, we tested a stream on your farm, Robin, so we can look at the variability we saw in dissolved oxygen in streams, in ponds, and for the folks that we tested spring water for there. So again, it's just like helping you put your farm in some context. And, I asked Robin last night, like, you have the top star. Does that mean you're like, oh, I don't need to do anything else? But no, you felt differently about it, right?
Well, yeah, because it's like a combination of like, what can I improve, which is, I've talked about my 35, but it's also, what am I doing great and how can I make sure to maintain that? So that's what it feels like. I'm even more concerned about my perfect riparian area.
Yeah, so I guess the question now for you is like, now what, Robin? What do you do now that you've like gone through this process, looked at your own data, and then you have some context to look at it in comparison to other farms? You've assessed your farm sustainability for the past year, this past growing season. What do you do now?
Yeah, well, it's a big motivator to make change, and it's a great group to make change with. So I think goal setting is right there on the slide. But it's an opportunity to see what we can do next in our next phase of farm development, what we can do better, like when I go home on Sunday or short, long term, whatever. So I think it's just a moment for self-reflection. And we should talk about the,
Yeah, and I do want to say too, like, Rob and I have both talked as farmers that filled this out. Like, it gives you the opportunity to tell the story of your farm to your customers. Yeah. Like, I'm taking my farm sustainability assessment to one of my like restaurant clients that wants to buy stuff from me to show them, like, these are all the great things that we do on our farm, and this is important to us because your restaurant has sustainability goals. And Robin's like, yeah,
so it goes back to that 66% of people that took the tool in my cohort or use the tool that are direct marketing. It's like an incredible marketing opportunity because you're telling the story. So it's like the USDA certified organic sticker is a thing that you can see visually. We don't have the sticker for this yet, but we do have that story, and we do have the QR code. Now we have a QR code. People can go look at the website. But it's a great marketing opportunity. It's a great way to tell the story of the sustainability of your farm, which is really more than just a single identifying certification, in my mind.
Yeah. But it's gathered enough data to also set you up for some of those like more formal marketing opportunities that are out there. And so again, I know this is hard to read. It's a screenshot from the tool, but Robin didn't get the chance to fill this part out because after she filled out the farm and we knew we were gonna get this Climate-Smart project funding, we were like, okay, how do we help farmers like take the leap from now you're done with the assessment, what do you do next? So I'm gonna give you some details about Oak's Climate-Smart project, but just to say, there's 21 practices that have been deemed climate smart by the USDA. These are you may have seen them through NRCS before. that farmers can engage in that have been shown to either reduce greenhouse gas emissions or sequester carbon. This is just a snapshot of 5 of them, but we had the farmers in the fall cohort go through and look at each of those, see the description, see the NRCS codes, link to it if they want to, and talk about like, oh, okay, like, yeah, that's something we already informally do on our farm, or it's a high priority, or really that's not a priority for us. So they've been thinking about their farm through this process. They fill this out. It helps us to know, like the acreage. This is from Robin's farm. I did ask her to fill this out for the presentation so we could get an idea. But then we can go over then to USDA's Comet Planner. So I should say, like, our sustainability tool is not like a carbon footprinting tool, but we can go to some tools that are out there. You know, the farmer is gathering enough data that they can then take the next step, but we're here to help hold the hand of the farmer too and use some of the tools that have been developed by USDA and look at some of those practices she identified as something she might want assistance with, and then enter those into this tool. You just have to tell your state and county, and then the practices that you're interested in, and then we can look at, like, here are like 4 practices that Robin identified in the acreage there, and then we can look at the metric tons of CO2 equivalents that would either be reduced or sequestered on the farm given those practices. And this tool does pull weather and soil data from her county. It's not like the most, I don't want to say it's like, it doesn't ask you all the details of your farm, so we can like dig into more of those details, but it gives you a quick overview to assess which of those practices you want to do. So I'm gonna now have this up and talk a little bit about how this work we have been doing and this tool we've been trialing leads into our Climate-Smart project. And so as Brooke mentioned at lunch, there were 141 organizations across the country that were awarded funding through this Partnership for Climate-Smart Commodities grant, and Oak was awarded one of them. It's a 5-year project. We want to work with farmers. We want to work with up to 75 farmers, even up to 100 farmers a year. And we are opening applications today. We'll be accepting applications for this project up through March, and then enrolling farmers based on the applications. And so the benefits that anybody in this room that's a farmer, I'm gonna say pretty much anybody in this room that's a farmer can participate. And there's the benefits of not only do you get to fill out the farm sustainability assessment tool, you get paid to do that. And then you get the technical assistance from these new folks that we're hiring, our soil health specialists, who are gonna come out and help get you your free soil sampling, and there's gonna be more Oak field days related to these practices, education opportunities, and then we're also working with some partners to help develop some value chain opportunities where if you want to you want to smell your climate-smart commodities, if you want to sell your climate-smart commodities, you can smell them too if you want. We're helping to build those opportunities for farmers so that after the 5 years of the funding ends, there's still opportunities that are long-lasting through this. And then the really exciting part is just getting paid to do climate-smart practices on your farm. So farmers across Kentucky are eligible. We're accepting farms of all different sizes. We want to emphasize that we want to work with historically underserved farms. You can be certified organic. You don't have to be certified organic. You can be in transition. You can be conventional or split operations. And here's just a list of some of the commodities that we would be working with farmers. Again, you get paid an incentive payment to fill out the Global Farm Metric Farm Sustainability Assessment Tool, the free soil testing. You'd also get the bricks and the dissolved oxygen testing at your farm. You'd get technical assistance, including somebody to come out and pull your soil samples, somebody to help you run through those scenarios for greenhouse gas emissions reductions and carbon sequestration. You get help writing a management plan if this is a new, for new practices you want to implement. And for some of the practices that would require perennial plant stock, we have the access to free or reduced price perennial plant stock. And then that value chain development piece that I mentioned. This is the list of 21 practices here that are eligible. If you have other things you want to work on in your farm, we also at Oak have capacity outside of the Climate-Smart project to help you with those things. We can help link you to resources. Like Robin said, we have a new organic production specialist that can help you with, like, if you're like, I want to work on my my high tunnel tomatoes, we can help you with that. But these are the ones within the Climate-Smart project. That QR code takes you right to, you can also go to just the Oak website and find the Climate-Smart project, and there's an application there. If you're already an Oak member and you access our website, you just fill in your, your like username and password, or you can create a new, a new account. Okay. Just want to recognize that we've worked with a lot of partners through this process. They're up here. We continue to work in partnership with a lot of folks. This is a really exciting opportunity for us to build on the relationships that Oak has built over the years. There's our contact information if you want to know more. But I think what I'm actually going to do is just back it up. I want people to have that QR code if you're interested in applying. And I know we've got like 3.5 minutes for questions, but we got there. So we do want to take some questions from the audience if you have some questions. Yeah.
Does the resources that are provided to help improve like farm sustainability, do those cover all 12 categories? Like how to improve all of them? Or do you plan on adding more ways to improve?
Yeah, that's a great question. So she asked if the resources included ways of improving sustainability in all 12 categories. So the Climate-Smart project, there's a list of this list that you can, of practices. We know that these are ones that will help in the realm of reducing greenhouse gas emissions and improving carbon sequestration. But within the tool, we do have, like when Robin filled it out at the bottom of all of her questions, there's a ton of resources that folks can link to. Like if you had a question about labor, right, we're like linking to the Agricultural Justice Project and some other things where people might have resources outside of the realm of like what Oak does. And then we're also having this one-on-one contact with the farmer to help if there's something that Oak can help with, like I mentioned, like high tunnel growing or whatever, that we can help link them in that way. Yeah. There was a question back there.
What is the goal of this data collection? Is this purely a marketing piece for the farms itself, or is it a data collection benchmarking, like where farms are at in our region?
Yeah, so you asked what the goal of the data collection was. So really, it's a self-assessment. The data is on some of this stuff, we know, like we're doing the soil sampling the same way with everybody, so we can compare those results like side by side. We're using the same lab with the same protocol, right? But some of the stuff is, it's a self-assessment, and some of the farms don't, I guess I wanna say, some farms are really good at, or do you wanna jump in there? Okay. At recording some things about their farm in good detail and some aren't. And so I think that there's, the global farm metric part is really a self-assessment for the farmer to think about what they want to work on their farm, and then that's like the launching point for next steps. And we can help through the Climate-Smart project, but also it's also like we're collecting the data to provide the benchmarking back to the farm so people can see where they are in context to other farms, and maybe improve in places where we don't have like benchmarking data. But at this point, like it sets you up to have marketing opportunities, and we at Oak, as part of this 5-year project, are gonna be helping to develop some of those more formal marketing opportunities that people could funnel into. And so that's gonna be like a matter of working with our value chain partners. So if we have a buyer that wants to buy like grass-fed lamb, for example, and we have farmers that do grass-fed lamb, like we can help collect the data that buyer would need, through the sustainability assessment so that they could sell through that market channel. Okay, we'll get this one right up front first. That's a great question. Yes, if you want to start a new agricultural product, yes, we want to help you get that going. Or if you're not growing one of those other commodities, yeah.
Explain in that question how it's like in one of the slides it showed the questions, and it's like I'm already doing this on my farm. I'm not doing it, but it's a high priority. I'm not doing it, but it's a low priority, and I'm never going to do that thing. So it.
Yeah, I think we're out of time. So, but I'm just gonna say, Robin and I we're here. We'll be at the social. Please, if you have more questions, please come up to us and ask us. And then Brooke also is also a great person to talk to if you have questions about the Climate Smart project. So, thanks everybody.